Welcome once again to the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. I'm your host, Steve McAllister. Please pardon the lousy pun, but there will be an additional punch or three to next week's ICE Barcelona, the first major conference for the global gaming industry in 2026. The presenting sponsor of this august podcast will have a significant presence on the exhibit floor of the Fira Gran Via in the beautiful Spanish city. One of his partners on site will be the folks from Behind the Gloves, which brings together jabbing, bobbing, and weaving with the power of corporate engagement to help people better manage their lives. To learn more about this unique partnership, we welcome to the podcast for the first time the chairman and founder of Bede Gaming, Michael Bradley, and the founder of Behind the Gloves, Lee McFarland. Gentlemen, welcome to the Gaming News Canada show.
Thank you, Steve. It's Michael Brady. Close. Very close.
What did I call you?
You gave me Bradley. This happens all the time.
Crying out loud.
It's such a popular name over there, right? So you gave me Bradley, but that's okay. I can take it.
Okay, well, normally I would re-record the intro, but given that your eloquent correction, Michael, we're gonna leave that in, and it just shows that there goes my number one goal of being perfect in 2026.
Listen, best to get that one out of the way quickly, though. I find.
Yeah, I think best to get out the first full week of the new year. But welcome, hey Michael. I want to start with you, and this is a unique partnership between Behind the Gloves and Bede Gaming, and I'm really excited to talk to Lee about this, and also you over the next 45 minutes or so. But maybe you can just start, Michael, by telling us the backstory behind this unique partnership.
Wow. Okay. So obviously, I was one of the founders of Bede Gaming, and I remain the chairman of that business. And we'll come on to talk about that a little bit more later. But in relation to Lee and Behind the Gloves, so it started with him punching me in the face. Lee was my coach for a charity boxing event that we did in the UK. And Lee was pretty much the guy who inspired me to do it. And he was certainly the guy that got me over the line and into the ring to have my first and only fight of my life. I've since retired, thankfully, with one win under the belt and no intention of any form of rematch. So Lee started there in my life, and I realized what an inspirational figure he was. He was integral to the Oliver's Wish charitable boxing event that we're actually staging again in a couple of months' time in London. Lee didn't just inspire me; he inspired a number of the boxers involved in that event. And for me, as a first-time boxer, it made me realize what a galvanizing and actually quite life-changing impact that kind of thing can have on you. Lee's background was also inspirational, and I got to know him more and more, and I realized that I was alongside a genuinely motivated and wonderful individual. And when we successfully deployed this boxing event and then did it again, it became evident that we were onto something a little bit more than just a annual or nearly annual charitable event. It became evident that we'd captured the imagination of large parts of the industry. So Lee and I spoke and realized that we could take this further than just occasional informal sessions at a couple of conferences a year. And we realized that we could build it out into something much more valuable. What was absolutely explicitly clear from the beginning is that the key and prime motivation for doing that was to do good and to give people something different to do at conferences, a different way of socializing, engaging, networking, but also just an alternative to perhaps the traditional boozy, drinky, eating things that a lot of us do, and probably still will, even if we're involved in Behind the Gloves. But it's created an amazing alternative. I could talk for hours, but I'll stop now, and I'll probably make some more points in a moment and hand over to Lee.
Hey, Lee, you created Behind the Gloves back in the winter of 2023, and I have to believe there's probably a bit of a COVID-19 pandemic story attached to that as well. But can you just talk to our audience about the motivation and the inspiration to start this program?
Yeah, no, thank you, Stephen, and Brady. Thank you for the great introduction. As Brady mentioned, this come on the back of training Michael and a few of the other boxers for the Oliver's Wish, and And what and I boxed for most of my life, even from a young child, and and I've seen the value that the boxing was given. Those, the individuals, partaking in the Oliver's Wish charity boxing match, and we then ran, I think it was SBC Barcelona when SBC was actually in Barcelona. We ran a session there. It was 5 people in a park, and we were just literally just trying to get through it. But again, the community and the energy that kind of that created, I quickly identified, we can do more with this. And with engaging with other individuals within the industry that have some boxing experience, or were asked about how they could get involved, we really grew this quite quickly into a reoccurring theme, where we could go to conferences, get a venue. We started off in a park, then we got small gyms, now we've got bigger gyms. We're getting, ICE, we've got 40 attendees per day over 3 days, plus functional fitness and yoga where we have 20 attendees. And again, what we've seen over the last year is, people, individuals within our industry be on this journey, and seeing the progress that they've made and some of the stories that come back from that. And that's really, for me, one of the key areas that I get so much personal value out of this, is to see how this helps others rather than, what do I get out of it. And then the other point of that is the impact that we have to the community of where we are running these events. So we always use a local gym. We partner with generally local charities in that city. And it's about, really giving back to the community that's allowing us as an industry to, partake in these conferences in their city. It's, for us, it's about that impact that we can have on individuals, organizations, and then the wider community that, that we engage with.
Michael, I want to ask you, and again, maybe this is because I cover the industry on a daily basis, but it does feel like the gambling industry is in the crosshairs right now in several jurisdictions around the world. We're going to talk a little bit later about, I'm not sure turbulent is the right word, but it's certainly been a very busy past 12 months, and it looks like the next 12 months are going to be something similar. But your industry is one where you have executives, you have legal experts, you have engineers, you have marketing people, communications people. Bede Gaming employs people across many sectors. And as Lee and I were discussing before we hit the record button here, there is kind of something cool. There's a cool dynamic about bringing people from across all these functions. And as Lee pointed out, someone who might be a junior marketing person being in the same gym as the founder of the company.
It's so true. That's such a good point, Steve. I've been in the industry for 25 years. There's obviously loads of different cohorts of people within this industry. There's some people who've made absolute fortunes. There's some people who've built businesses. There's people at the early stages of their career. The one thing that happens when you get in the ring with someone is you are absolutely equal, because they've got every right to punch you in the face first. And that it genuinely is a leveler. Sometimes people say this stuff, and it's just words. I know, because having been in the ring with people who I guess were my heroes, and also people who were just working at the very lower ends of their careers, if they hit you in the face, they're the winner that day, right? And they're the guys. It's a genuinely quite humbling feeling. And I think in many ways, I think that's why this works. We go to the conferences, that they can often be full of hyperbole, and people being overexcited, and people feeling very self-important, and money sloshing around here, there, and everywhere. It's a very grounding experience to do something so raw, where that fundamentally it's about helping people, whether that be the people actually doing it, or whether that be the communities and charities benefiting from it. That's what you're doing, and that's what you're doing for that hour and a half while you're training, and you can't think about any other aspect. It sets people up so well for the day. It truly does. You speak to people, and I have to be honest, Steve, since my 2 efforts to train for the boxing events I did, I think I've only been to one of Lee's events because I can't get up early enough to do it. And I'm always in constant admiration of the people who do, and I think I'm going to try and get to one this year in Barcelona because I know my entire B team are going to there, particularly if you want to see them. They're going to be there. They're very committed, and they'll probably shout at the chairman if he doesn't turn up himself. So I'm going to try and do it. But yeah, it's a true leveler.
Well, Lee, it feels like there could be a potential fundraiser too, where employees go one round with Michael and have a chance to take their best shot at the chair.
Yeah, Steve, I cannot believe you've put that out there. I cannot believe that. That will now happen, and that won't be good for my health.
I'm literally going to send Colin a WhatsApp after this, and let's start hedging on this. Just to go on to that point, I was actually in Toronto a couple of months back with an operator, PointsBet, and we'd done a session. 2 sessions at 161 boxing in Toronto, and again going back to the Scotty, the CEO, was in the gym with everyone else, and it was a level playing field, and the energy during and also the energy afterwards, and actually what it allowed to happen was conversations that wouldn't happen just in the office, and to see that's what gives me so much energy and continues to drive me, is that I love to create that. I love to really bring people together and see the best in each other, because actually when you're getting punched in the face, you actually do see the best in people. And I love to get punched myself. I'm the first to put the gloves on and get in with people. But yeah, it really is. And I think, as I said, there's many a story of people that have trained with us for the last year, have lost weight, their confidence increased, they've had promotions, they've taken up boxing regularly, outside of what we do. They're now at a local gym, they're training 3 times a week. A lot of this year's boxers in Oliver's Wish have been attendees of a lot of our sessions, so they've had the confidence to be able to put their hat in the ring for, pardon the pun, their hat in the ring for Oliver's Wish, and with a level of confidence. And that's what we're doing with, within our industry, is we're creating this community that are standing up, and they're doing it for the right reasons. And, whether that's, individually, but also the impact that has to the wider industry and community.
Confidence is you, Steve. As someone who's been part and been fortunate enough to build businesses, when you see people come in, building their confidence by placing them in actually a slightly vulnerable situation, and then them realizing they get through that vulnerable situation, does the world of good for people's confidence, self-esteem, sense of identity even. And I think that you do genuinely see that when people come and do this, because they're often quite scared. Boxing sounds quite scary, and yet it's such a managed, safe environment of people who care that you kind of, when you go into it and you go into it with that vulnerability, you come out as a bigger, better person. And I think that Lee sees that now on a scale that perhaps we hadn't imagined when it was just me and him in the garden behind me, squatting, sparring in the rain. It's kind of now it's on a different scale altogether.
It really feels, guys, like like yoga, like Tai Chi, like karate, like jujitsu, that this boxing is accessible. It doesn't matter what your body type is, doesn't matter what your age is, doesn't matter what your gender is. You can put on a pair of boxing gloves and get a great workout. As you mentioned, Michael, get that confidence. And I think that's one of the benefits of this program. It's just not limited to 25-year-old women and men who are chiseled.
Yeah, I always say this, and it's so inclusive, because it's individual effort. So no matter what level you are coming in at, it's an individual effort. But also, what I do say to that is, it's when you work as a group, you all help each other, and everyone. I've never seen anyone not support someone else. And so what I say to all the attendees is, group effort to collectively during the session, but it's an individual outcome. You're the one that's going to get the best out of it, depending on what you want to put in. And everyone's levels are different. Some people punch harder than others. Some people haven't got the cardiovascular, but that's the beauty of this, is that, you know, because we always, and Mike, you know, referring to this earlier, was that we have experience in these sessions. Myself, we've got some, you know, really great coaches that have got years of experience that we can really help people. So again, it allows, and I always, you know, just going back to this, you know, what people get from this is, you go in with, you know, an unknown, you get discipline, you get confidence, and with that, you then, you know, you're able to thrive in that, and then, you know, all of these great things that people get out of it.
Is your iGaming platform truly driving your growth? Bede Gaming will partner with you to deliver an open API platform, powerful integrations, and unlimited configurability so you can customize, scale, and grow faster. Stay ahead of player trends and outpace your competition. Meet Bede this month at ICE Barcelona to find out more. Yeah, well, don't want you to give me names here. You must have personal anecdotes of people who've gone through this program and came to you, Michael or Lee, afterwards and said this, you know, maybe a life changer is a little bit over the top, but this has made a difference for me, or this allowed me to get from A to B in my career or in my personal life. Any specific anecdotes like that, Michael? I'll start with you.
I think it's important that, you know, we have different types of people come and do this. Some people are doing it to recover from something. Some people are doing it because they have a challenge in their lives, and this helps them address it. And I think in those instances, it's kind of it's quite evident. And I won't name them, because I think that, you know, for them, it has been truly quite life changing. As somebody who didn't come at this to change my life, but came at it to do something out of my comfort zone for good reason, I can say that I'm one of the people who Lee worked with and, you know, supported. And whilst at that point we hadn't truly formalized behind the gloves, it's the same as what behind the gloves has become. I think for me, it put me in a position of unique vulnerability, and I was deeply uncomfortable throughout. I hadn't anticipated the physical, mental, emotional demands that it would take to go through 3 months. In fact, we did it twice because COVID intervened with the original event. So 3 months twice of, you know, very frugal consumption, high intensity exercise, you know, dismal, grim, you know, UK weather, January to February, you know, March in the rain, and Lee just shouting at me and asking me to hit him and keep me going. I know that definitely changed something in me, and it's stuck with me since. And I still train in the same way as a consequence of what Lee did. So for me, as somebody who wasn't coming into it with a dependency or a challenge of any kind, it definitely changed me. So I know if it can change me, then there's other people out there who perhaps even need it more, whose lives will be transformed by getting involved in something like this.
Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, no, look, I'm going to talk about myself. You know, I'm going to talk about what I get out of this, and you know, I do struggle with my own personal, you know, addictions. You know, and I'm very vocal and open about that. You know, I run another program called Recovery in Gaming. So what do I, you know, when I go to these sessions, I see that, you know, a big part of my recovery is what can I do for others. And so, you know, on a daily basis, when I'm doing these sessions, I get so much out of this personally, because I can see the value that it gives individuals, and you know, that's what I get from this, and it really has changed my life on a personal level. You know, it's kept me, you know, on the straight and narrow. You know, it allows me to be committed to some of the causes and the purposes that I've, you know, set myself. So again, going back to that mentality change, and you know, some of the thinking that I would have had before, you know, running behind the gloves. You know, this allows me to stay grounded to who I am as a person, and not let my alter ego come out. So that's me personally, and then there's also other individuals, and I can, you know, there's a gentleman that's based out of Malta. We run a session this year. He will tell you, you know, he was extremely overweight. He come to a session, was really, really nervous, you know, and I actually went and met him, picked him up, took him to the session. Because again, this is about what I can do for others and what we can collectively do for others. He done the session, really didn't enjoy it during the time, but you know, after, you know, that coffee afterwards, he's like, wow, I've never felt like this before. He's now lost, you know, 25 kilograms. He's in the fittest he's ever been. His life, you know, he's got a new job. There's another, you know, another person that's you know, quite well known in the industry. You know, had a number of injuries, really reluctant to do any physical fitness, you know, come to the session, you know, and then started picking up boxing 3-4 times a week. So again, we are changing people's lives, and it's the catalyst. And I think that for us is really important, is that, you know, we really want to, you know, hone in and really provide that safe space for people to come, let some steam off, you know. And I think that's really important as well, especially at conferences. I get nervous. I get really nervous at the beginning of a conference because, like, who do I need to see? When am I going to see him? You know, am I going to hit my targets? You know, and because there's so much pressure at these conferences because it's condensed. Oh, am I going to have to drink? Am I going to be an idiot? These sessions allow you to have that decompression before it all starts. And, you know, I expect if you ask anyone that attends the session, they are a lot more relaxed leaving when they joined. And that's really, really key for these sessions. And again, we get that blood pumping in the morning, and it allows you to roll into your day really kind of energized. And that, for me, I just see it. I see it at every conference, and the feedback's always amazing. So, you know, we continue to have the good fight.
It's important not to underestimate, you know, if somebody is heading into a conference, wherever it is in the world, if they've got a difficult relationship with alcohol and they're heading into a conference, and listen, I love alcohol and I love booze and I love partying and I love conferences and I love all of it. But if you're heading into that and you have a difficult relationship, then in the past, you would look at it and think, well, I just have to swerve everything. I just have to stay away from all of this, as opposed to what this provides, which is a positive prospectus. You can anticipate that conference thinking, well, I'm actually going to attend 3, you know, sessions of Behind the Gloves. I'm going to meet 30, 40, 50, 60 people during those events. I'm going to have these feelings of social cohesion and togetherness across all parts of gaming. I'm going to meet people who I wouldn't have otherwise met. And you can then approach the whole experience in a completely different way. It's not to invalidate all the traditional stuff or to point fingers at that. I've got no issue with it whatsoever, because it's ultimately down to individual responsibility. However, this gives people an alternative, and it is a genuine alternative. And I don't think we should underestimate just how changing people's anticipation can also change the way they then approach something.
I want to lean into that a little more, guys, because Michael, before you joined us here, Lee and I were talking about just the mental health aspect. And here in Ontario, you know, the provincial government's ordered the public service people back to work this week. We're recording this interview on January 8th. So we've got people who've been working from home for the better part of 5 years now, who are now going to be spending more time at the office. And Lee and I were talking about, again, the you know, another benefit of Behind the Gloves is people getting out of their homes, getting out of their basements, getting out of their bedrooms, wherever it is they've been working, and having that interaction with people. And the mental health aspect is something that gets talked about not just in this industry, but all over the place these days. And, you know, as a father of a daughter who went through some pretty tough times with mental illness as a teenager and into her early 20s, it's something that's certainly top of mind with me. And Lee, I just have to believe, like Michael said, just having that interaction, you know, that networking, the building relationships, and even something as simple as seeing people within your own company that maybe you haven't seen for 2 or 3 years, that's all positive.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, Stephen. And again, I think for me, boxing throughout my life, and you know, I've struggled with mental health. You know, I'm ex-military. I've got, you know, again, none of this is new to people. And boxing again grounds me. It gives me a place to release. It gives me a place to not think about all of the, you know, the resentments and the things that are going on outside. I'm focused. It gives us a place to come together and focus together. And I think that's, you know, as I said, group effort, individual outcome. You know, it's really the beauty of this. We've got a community that doesn't just stop when we leave the gym. The community grows and it continues to grow, and relationships have been formed through these sessions. And so people actually have a sense of trust. You know, there's no better trust than trusting someone to punch you in the face that they're not going to punch you too hard. You know, they're not. And so you create this natural trust. And trust in this world is difficult today because we have lost that social cohesion with, you know, COVID, working from home, you know, engagement with each other on a personal level rather than kind of just on a professional level. And so I really, again, one of the things that I always, finish every session I look at, and again, as like I said to you, it's just seeing when two people connect. And you'll see moments, and I see it definitely in all the sessions of last year, is that you'll see moments of people just smiling with each other. And the words won't be said, but you could just see the happiness in people's eyes, because all of the other problems that are happening outside, they disappear for an hour and a half. People sit together and they train together. It's hard, people are swear, people are, but it gives that sense of unity because everyone's equal and everyone's doing the same thing, all at different levels. And again, it goes back to the levels. But again, it's that sense of community which continues outside of the ring, but we create it within the gym and within the ring.
As you know, Steve, Bede supplies platform technology to OLG. And I've spent a lot of time with the people of OLG over the last, I guess, 7-8 years. And particularly in the last few months of 2025 in Vegas, Niagara. And the common theme was obviously the existential dread of the return to work, with everybody coming back into the office. And speaking to leaders and people across the organization, there were obviously fears, concerns about what that was going to mean. And I think actually I did plant this very seed in their minds around something that can galvanize teams. And I said that we would be doing stuff at the Canadian Gaming event, in when is it now? July this year?
May.
I think it's moved, hasn't it?
Yeah,
has it moved forward or backwards? I can't remember.
I think it's moved backwards to May. I'm going to check that. I'm going to check that we were talking, Michael.
I did notice it no longer coincides with the Football World Cup, which is disappointing because that would have been a double whammy for me. But anyway, I said to the guys, I think it's imperative that we do something at the Canadian Gaming events, and obviously this was all happening at the same time that we were truly establishing behind the gloves, combining those two things, working with people in Ontario and across Canada who are, now for the first time going back to the office full time. I think it's the perfect timing in many ways to do something like this, something which would encourage as many people as possible to get involved.
Just to confirm, the SBC Summit Canada is May 19th to 21st. Listen, I'm going to warn you right now, guys. Two of my favorite people in the industry are work at OLG, Tian Decour and Tony Batanti. And I'll warn you right now, you don't want to get in the ring with either one of those two people.
Oh, I certainly don't, but I'm really happy to encourage them to get in a ring together. Lee will get in with them. He's not scared. Trust me.
Yeah. I'm fine. I'll get in with anyone. It's there. It's enjoyable. So,
hey guys, this question for both of you. I'll start with you, Lee. And obviously, if you're a professional boxer, the greatest satisfaction is the knockout punch. As someone who plays hockey 3 times a week, obviously you enjoy the stuff on the ice. But for me, it's just being in that dressing room with the guys before the game and getting dressed and having conversation. And it's interesting. I play with a bunch of guys in their late 50s, 60s, and a few guys in their 70s. And every Wednesday morning, you see guys show up at the rink at 9 o'clock and we're not on the ice till 10 o'clock. And it's because I believe it's because they just like being around each other in the dressing room and telling the same stories we've been telling for 30 years. And it's that camaraderie. And Lee, I have to believe it's the same thing with what you're doing at Behind the Gloves. It's not Michael punching someone in the nose and drawing blood. It's the sweating and the camaraderie and the conversations afterwards and the laughs. That's what makes your event so popular.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. And I'll just talk about ICE, and I even today I had 3 people message me, hey, what time are we going to the gym? Well, the gym opens at 7:30. Should we meet at 6:45? And again, we're just going to stand outside the gym, and that's the beauty of it, because actually our industry's, a great industry and conferences are great, but it's also very lonely, and especially if you're only salesperson going to ICE, it can be quite a lonely place, and actually to have that kind of camaraderie. And rightly so, look, I think there's nothing better than getting punched in the face. I actually get so much adrenaline. I love it. It's it's just something I enjoy. But again, when you're in that ring with someone, it creates that unity, it creates that camaraderie, and it gets left in the ring. And this goes back to the discipline, the confidence, and that integrity that that gets built in the gym. So yeah, definitely agree with that, Steve.
Yeah, Michael.
The camaraderie in the lead up to every training session is extraordinary. The camaraderie, if you go on to, take a fight, which obviously most people don't do, but if they happen to get involved in the annual event we do, they do. That is extraordinary, because I think when you're in a place of fear, and there is always mild fear and mild anxiety, it opens people up enormously. People really communicate, and I think the echoes from Lee's events are extraordinary. I think I can see all the different communities, all the WhatsApp groups, all the people chatting. The echoes are there every day. There's people talking all the time, and I know that some amazing friendships have already been created where they didn't previously exist. Again, you're talking about a kind of almost existential support network that exists for you. You're part of a community, you're part of something, and everyone wants to be part of something, right? Everyone wants to feel that there's other people who care about them. When you put yourself at risk with somebody, it might be the same guy who's trying to punch you in the face 1 minute, who puts his arm around you, a few days later when you're in trouble or there's a problem. And I think people really feel that. So it is so important that people understand that doing a 1 hour, 1.5 hour session with Lee at Behind the Gloves is one thing, but being part of that community, that's kind of forever, right? And I know we're only a couple of years into this, but I just sense that this will have echoes many, many decades from now, and people will still be feeling the benefits and still feel part of something.
Yeah, not to believe, Lee, that people that participate in your sessions are going back to their bosses, their HR department, or their wellness people, and saying, "Hey, we need to do this again, or we need to get more people involved." And it just feels like this is something that has the potential to become as common as what you see at conferences. And Michael mentioned, the receptions and networking opportunities, and there's lots of events to go have a drink and a bite to eat at these summits and gaming conferences. But I could see Behind the Gloves having a constant presence at these events.
Yeah, I think what's really surprised me, but I mean, this for 25 is just the support from organisations. We've got a number of organisations that continue to support us to ensure that we're able to put these events on, and again, that we obviously want to continue to grow that, so obviously we can create impacts for individuals. But again, the other really important part to me is that we have a wider impact to really kind of grassroots charities in the locations, and that also has to be one of our, and it is for me, and I know it is for our group within Behind the Gloves, is that leading principle that we have an impact outside of our industry. And that for me only happens with the support from organisations. But yeah, I really see this year, 2026, where we can actually really contribute to individuals, but again the wider industry and the wider communities that we serve.
Steve, I have the privilege of sitting on the advisory board at Behind the Gloves, and I know that most of our conversation is about values. And one of the things we talk about, Behind the Gloves isn't struggling to get people to come to their events. We're oversubscribed for every event. People are dying to be there. It's so popular. It's resonating so well. Behind the Gloves is getting loads of sponsors. People are so keen to sponsor and associate and partner with us. And of course, we want more. But it is incredible how much this resonates. But one thing that's very common is the companies almost entirely that want to associate with Behind the Gloves tend to have quite a mature sense of their own values and what they are trying to do for their employees, and what it means to have an employee. I'm not saying every company in this sector or indeed in any sector thinks like that, but I know at Bede Gaming, as we built that business up from nothing, we were always very employee centric. We always cared deeply about the well-being of all of our employees. And we were always looking for ways to enhance that well-being and support our own values. So the alignment and the association between Bede and Behind the Gloves has nothing to do with my common involvement. I can assure you of that. It's got everything to do with the people noticing what Lee was doing, understanding Lee, and then realizing that we wanted to associate with it. And I think there's other companies who are seeing that too. And long may that continue. But it's so important to realize that values plays a big part in all of this.
Hey, just quickly off that, guys, like I'm a big believer in culture, whether it's, you're running a company or you're coaching a sports team or running a program. And it again, Lee, it just feels that what you're offering, it really does help either reinforce, as Michael mentions, the values of a company, or else helps maybe for some companies might turn around a culture that maybe isn't as good as it should be.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm a firm believer that, again, I try to be as authentic as possible, and again, all I can do is talk about my story and how I want to continue to help people, and it helps me. And as I said, on an individual basis, I've really seen this, really help a number of individuals over this period of time, and I think we can do more. And as Michael said, we really are looking forward to partnering with other organisations that we can come in and support them. A lot of what we can do is around tailoring specific sessions, and how we can support them on building some of those values or contributing to those values in that organisation. For me, um, I do what I know what I can do, and that's really bringing in that energy, giving people confidence, and really being that motivator behind people, because I have bad days like all the time, but what keeps me going is knowing that I can go and help some other person, and that for me is really a driver for me, and the kind of value for behind the gloves is that we continue to do that. I always talk about this, and I will say this is it's important for me of the impact that we can collectively continue to have on whatever scale that looks like, and as long as we continue to do that and we keep our principles and values, and transparency is key. I think we've got something that's a winning formula.
Michael, anything you want to add to that culture question?
I think culture, is incredibly important within a company, but it's also important not just because you want your people to be happy and you want your people to feel engaged with what they do. It's important because it makes you more successful. When you have a company where everybody is punching in the same direction, pretty cheesy that, but I'll go with it. Punching in the same direction, where everybody is working together, I think that you do better, right? There's no doubt about that. And you can have as many rules, strictures, and ways of trying to enforce things on people, but ultimately, people work when they want to, and they work when they feel like they're chasing a common goal. And I've seen that across every company I've been involved in. And I think that this does have a very positive impact on the culture of businesses. It has all the things we've talked about in terms of that equality, that humility, that vulnerability, all things I think you need to have within a company to create a proper culture.
I want to ask you guys about the year ahead and across the industry as a whole. But before I do that, Lee, I just want to give you the opportunity, like the people that are going to ICE in Barcelona that want to sign up for your sessions, how can they do that?
Yeah, so unfortunately we are fully booked for the boxing. We have a waiting list, but please go to Behind the Gloves on LinkedIn, and you'll see posts. We do have some spaces at the Functional Fitness and Yoga, which is happening on the Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesday. Those are sponsored gratefully by Bede. So there are some spaces for them, and if you would like to register for those, please again go to Behind the Gloves on LinkedIn, and you'll see the registration link. And it's a quick 2-minute form, and you'll be registered and contacted with details how to attend.
And I know, Lee, there are going to be Canadian companies attending ICE as well, so it's an opportunity to have a conversation with you and perhaps get you back to Canada again in 2026.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there for the Canadian Gaming Summit, and again, as Michael was mentioned, Bede are going to be supporting that. We've also identified our local charity, which will be Interval House, which is a charity that is really kind of important. It was the first women's refuge within Toronto. And again, we're very, very grateful that we can support those with a donation as part of this Behind the Gloves at the Canadian Gaming Summit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Michael, I also want to mention that the Bede Gaming booth will be in Hall 3 at Stand 3F70 from the 19th to the 21st in Barcelona. So anybody who wants to drop by can say hi to Michael and Colin Cole Johnson. And we promise that Michael will leave the gloves at the gym. Hey, Michael, I want to just.
You've done my job for me there, Steve. That was my job, but you've
Yeah.
done my job for me. I will be there. I'll be floating around the Bede Gaming stand. If you want to come and talk about behind the gloves, or you want to even talk about platform technology, we can talk about all of that at the Bede Gaming stand.
Hey, Michael, before we finish, as I mentioned, it's these are really, I guess, robust times in the gaming industry, and Colin did have a piece that I saw on LinkedIn earlier this week talking about the year ahead for Bede. But what do you kind of see as the challenges and opportunities for your company and also for the industry at large?
Okay, I'll start with one challenge. The challenge in the UK is that the taxation regime has become such that it's almost approaching unviable for many operators who are just focusing in the UK, which is going to have the unfortunate effect of driving the black market. And it's already happening, and we see it. And it's very hard to convince the politicians, but it's happening. So that's unfortunate. Elsewhere in the world, Bede operates in numerous markets, with Canada being the most interesting and exciting. Bede's prominent clients is OLG, and we continue to support them and grow with them. And I think they now operate within a different paradigm. They're operating in a competitive, regulated market, and they've held their own incredibly well, and they still run an extraordinary business. Bede continues to support them. Bede's expanding elsewhere in Canada with new clients. Bede continues to look for new clients within the Canadian market because we see it as the most, in many ways, predictable and sensible taxation market with an obvious audience. A lot of our success has been in the lottery sector, so that's an area which we think will continue to grow, not just in Canada but elsewhere in other regulating markets. We also do some great stuff in Africa, and I think we have a great client in Sun International that is growing at a rapid rate there. So we're looking to expand our footprint in those markets. I think fundamentally, we believe we have an extraordinary piece of technology, and we've never been aggressive in terms of getting hundreds and hundreds of clients. We've been very focused on delivering to the right clients the right product and not letting anyone down, and I think our clients would testify to that. So we're excited about the time ahead.
Hey, Michael, how much attention are you paying to what's going on in Alberta and what we expect will be the launch of that open market in 2026?
The Bede commercial team is paying enormous attention to it. I mean, I've been circling it for many, many years and looking at what's happening, but I think the Bede commercial team is in a great spot when it comes to what's happening in Alberta. It's already secured clients in that market and is looking to secure more, and is in, there's countless conversations occurring in Barcelona in a couple of weeks' time. And we welcome any more. But I think if it follows the Ontario model, where we were very much at the cutting edge of that, I think if it follows the Ontario model, then I don't think there's a better technology out there to support the new Alberta regulated market.
Hey, Lee, and I'll finish with you. And again, about the opportunities and challenges, but at the same time, based on your, founding, recovering in iGaming, there's, so much noise out there right now about problem gambling. And if you're following what's going on in North America, a lot of controversy around prop betting and match fixing scandals. And so, advertising is obviously a top hot button issue in the UK and as Canada as well. So would love to get your thoughts on that as you talk about the year ahead in the industry.
Yeah, no, I think just go back to Alberta. I mean, again, just to echo Mike, I think it's a really exciting time. I think we're going to start seeing some, news come out shortly around what that technical regulation looks like. So that's really exciting, and I think it'll be a really great opportunity. And I do believe it's going to be an Ontario-like market, which is really, really promising. So, yeah, then just on obviously the responsible gambling, I think what we are seeing is, and again, I think that there has to be consultation and engagement within the industry as well with the regulators. I think what we are seeing is, regulations and stipulations around kind of advertising coming in that are to benefit to the industry, and I think that's important. Is being responsible allows us to continue, and I think as long as it's done collectively, and there's engagement, we'll see some great stuff coming out of especially within Canada and obviously North America as well. But again, it's an always evolving topic. yeah, we just keep our eyes on that, and we'll see what happens in 26.
Lee McFarland is the founder of Behind the Gloves. Michael Bede is the chairman and founder of Bede Gaming. Hey guys, thanks so much for doing this. Really enjoyed the conversation. Feeling a little bad that I won't be in ICE next week at the conference, but wish you both a lot of success over there. And guys, I do look forward to seeing you at the SBC Summit Canada in May when it comes to Toronto.
Yeah, look forward
Thanks
to it.
so much, Steve. Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. Make sure you bring your gloves to the Canadian Gaming event, right?
I will bring my gloves and my boxing togs or cleats or whatever they call those things that you put on you put on your feet to get in the ring, guys. It won't be skates.
Good man, thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. As always, you can listen to this podcast on the various podcast apps. You can also watch our interview with Lee and Michael on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much again to Lee McFarland and Michael Bede for joining us today, and we will see everybody again very, very soon.